This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome. From Johannesburg here in South Africa, I'm Jevin Jansen. The show, of course, live broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We are also live on YouTube right now, where the show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today, well, we'll cross live to Pretoria shortly, where a memorial service will be held for Public Service and Administration Minister Collins Chabane and his two protectors. We look at a new legal framework for the construction industry. We'll talk about brand journalism and how that impacts you in our book slot a bit later. It's Speaking Truth to Power about HIV/AIDS. And we'll close the show with the South African Science Festival in the Eastern Cape. But first, let's get the day's news from Anine Domal.
Good morning, I'm Anine Domal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver a keynote address at the memorial service of Public Service Minister Collins Chabane today. The official memorial service of the late minister will be held at the Tshwane Event Centre in Pretoria at noon. Chabane and two of his bodyguards were killed in a car crash on the N1 near Polokwane on Sunday morning. He will be buried on Saturday at his home village of Chikundu in Limpopo. President Jacob Zuma will deliver a eulogy at Chabane's funeral. The situation in Jeppe's Town in Johannesburg seems to be calm this morning after violent protests broke out in the area yesterday. 22 people were arrested after residents took to the street in protest of an eviction notice by a private developer. Police say they will continue to monitor the situation in the area today. Government says it cannot confirm whether a South African is among those killed in the Tunisian Bardo Museum attack. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has condemned the attack, saying that no terrorist action can reverse the path of Tunisia towards democracy. Gunmen killed at least 20 people outside of the prestigious museum yesterday. Those killed included victims from Japan and Italy as they prepared to visit the Bardo Museum next to Parliament in Tunisia. Tourists from Colombia, Australia, Spain and Poland were also killed. Meanwhile, several people have been shot inside a restaurant in the city of Gothenburg in Sweden. Reports suggest that at least 2 of them have died, with the death toll expected to rise. Police say automatic weapons were believed to have been used in the shooting. They had no details on any suspects, but there are indications that the shooting was gang-related. Free State Police are investigating an inquest after 6 Transnet employees died after being struck by lightning yesterday. 5 others were also injured on the N8 outside of Botshabelo, east of Bloemfontein, when the lightning struck. They were working on a railway line and had taken shelter in a wooden structure at the time of the incident. And in cricket, India won the toss and elected to bat first against Bangladesh in their World Cup quarter-final at a hot and windy Melbourne cricket ground earlier. Jevin will give you the latest available score there.
Yeah, thanks, Anine. I'm just watching here. India is busy recovering after losing a couple of wickets. So 233 for the loss of 3 wickets now. This is after 43 overs. Still batting is Rohit Sharma. Well, he is there on 100. He just got to 100. He's on 103 not out, if I'm not mistaken. He's with Suresh Raina, who's batting there on 60-odd not out. The pick of the bowlers, Shakib Al Hassan, so far for the Bangladeshis. It should be a tight match. Keep you updated on the scores as it changes. Of course, South Africa made it through to the semi-finals yesterday. Now, today's business. The memorial service for the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Collins Chabane, will be held at the Tshwane Event Centre in Pretoria, starting at midday today. Chabane and his 2 bodyguards were killed in a car crash at the weekend. Meanwhile, mourners have paid tribute to the late minister at a memorial service in his rural village of Chikundu in Limpopo.
Villagers and comrades united in their grief. A man affectionately known as Animal, remembered for his role in the liberation struggle.
From a young age to the death, you remained a decent and well-disciplined freedom fighter.
His family still battling to come to terms.
He's actually a respectable somebody. He brings himself down to the people. That's why people like him. He doesn't carry himself. He doesn't show people as to whether he's a minister or what. But he behaves just like an ordinary person from an ordinary community.
All schoolmates who attended this school with Chabane say he portrayed leadership qualities from a tender age.
I met him back when he was in Standard B. He was a jolly child and he liked singing, just like his father.
Back at the family home, preparations are underway for his send-off. Chabane is being accorded a Category 1 funeral designated for ministers in office. President Jacob Zuma is expected to deliver the eulogy. To the hundreds gathered here, Collins Chabane was a servant of the people. They came to bid farewell to the boy of Chikundu, who even as a cabinet minister, never forgot where he came from. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News, Chikundu village in Limpopo.
Well, we'll be getting an update from the Tshwane Events Centre shortly. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty. We'll try and get that live update for you as soon as possible. But let's have a look at what you're talking about at the moment, of course, at SABC Newsroom. There you have wonderful pictures incoming from Njanje Chake. It says, talking about yesterday, Collins Chabane Memorial Service underway at his hometown village of Chikundu. That, of course, is what was happening there. More pictures incoming. Of course, the people of Limpopo very much in mourning after a horrific setback over the weekend. There you have a picture of the brother Samuel Chabane paying tribute to the late minister at that village memorial service. There you have some of the other more chief Chikundu at the memorial service of the late minister. All those pictures, of course, from our very own Njanje Chake. There you can see described as a unifier and a unifier. There, that was at the memorial service. All these pictures put up by our very own Njanje Chake. He's very active on Twitter. You can follow him at Njanje Chake. Now, let's go to Pretoria. Of course, the national memorial service for the late minister Chabane is scheduled to start at midday at the Tshwane Events Centre. It was formerly known as the Pretoria Showgrounds. That's in Soto Street in Pretoria. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the keynote address. The funeral will take place on Saturday at Minister Chabane's home village of Chikundu in the Thulamela municipality in the Vembe district in Limpopo. The service will commence at 9 a.m. on Saturday. His Excellency President Jacob Zuma will deliver the oration. Chabane and his two bodyguards, Lesibe Sekele and Lawrence Sentwane, were killed in a car accident outside Polokwane in Limpopo on Sunday. Now, for what will happen from 12 o'clock midday today at the Tshwane Events Centre, we're joined by our own reporter, Patricia Fasachi. Very good morning to you, Patricia. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben.
Patricia, just give us a quick update as to what is happening at the Tshwane Events Centre now and what's the expectation for later today.
Even a lot of activity taking place, of course, as government officials are putting up the finishing touches to the memorial service that will happen in about 3 hours' time. As we know, it is scheduled to start at around 12 o'clock. We're expecting dozens of people to show up, a lot of cabinet ministers, a lot of government officials, parliamentarians who will be here, and other dignitaries who will obviously come and bid their final farewells to the late Minister Collins Chabane, who passed away in that tragic car accident on Sunday morning. And as I've mentioned, a lot of activities, a lot of journalists who are here. The media is here in its full capacity. Security is also very tight, obviously. As we know, a lot of cabinet ministers will be here, and we are expecting the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa also to be here. And of course, he is scheduled to deliver the keynote address to honor the late Minister Collins Chabane.
I understand that protectors, they will also be honoured today at this memorial service. Is that accurate?
I'm sure, yes, that is, you are correct. They will also be honoured. There will also be tributes passed to them, obviously, and messages of sympathy and condolences to their families. But, of course, the main focus would be the fallen Minister Collins Chabane. But, yes, as you have mentioned, they will also reflect on the lives and the contributions of those two VIP protectors who passed in that tragic accident with the minister.
This will be a final moment to remember the life of Collins Chabane. We see him as a unifier. That's been the sentiment of many this week. What is your expectation of this?
Of course, since the news broke on Sunday morning, and that really shocked South Africa, we have seen a lot of ministers, friends, family, and even ordinary South Africans coming to the house in Waterkloof, where they came to express condolences. A lot of them describing the late minister as a humble man, an intellectual of great note. A lot of them sharing fond memories of, of them with the minister. And some cabinet ministers that we spoke to also sharing, their times that they spent with the late minister in exile. So from all that information that we gathered, obviously it seems like he really left, a great mark in their hearts. It's somebody that touched a lot of people, and he affected a lot of people in a good way. He was a great leader. He was, he played a great part in building South Africa's democracy, and obviously he also contributed immensely in terms of liberating South Africa.
Thank you.
That is more or less the messages that we will hear today when, a lot of people, family, friends and government will be paying tribute to the late minister.
Thank you very much, Patricia Fasaki, with an update there on the order of events that's expected at the Tshwane Events Centre. It will be a somber occasion. A somber mood already pervades the Tshwane Event Centre there. Of course, those of you out there that want to go and sign the condolence books, that's places all around the country. You can find all the areas where you can go and sign those condolence books. Well, that's on our Newsroom Facebook page. That's where you can find all that information. Now let's take a look at, the tweet of the day, or is it a pick of the day? It's a tweet of the day. Well, the tweet of the day. We all understand, of course, the roads must fall, and now the new hashtag Roads So White has caused a lot of consternation in Cape Town, at the University of Cape Town, that is. And our tweet of the day comes from Makomboti, who says, "Hi, let's take Roads Must Fall, Roads So White, the hashtags beyond just statues, to a higher order discussion about transformation." And that's at the heart of that scenario. Makomboti, thank you for your tweet of the day. That's our viewer tweet of the day. Let's now take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. These are the front pages from around the world. In China, the South China Morning Post reports at least 19 people were killed, including 17 foreign tourists, when militants attacked Tunisia's Bardo Museum in the capital, Tunis. Prime Minister Habib Assad said on Wednesday that they will leave no stone unturned in hunting down the terrorists. Now we move to Israel, where the Jerusalem Post leads with Israel will have a new government in place in time for Independence Day celebrations. Sources close to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this. In the United Kingdom, the Metro reports that a police officer in command during the Hillsborough disaster agreed yesterday that his failure to order the blocking of entry to the crowded terraces at the football stadium was the direct cause of the deaths of 96 people. Who can forget that disaster that shook the football world? Let's now take a look at what's happening across South Africa. Of course, we start in Nelspruit, the district court there, where the municipal manager, Noko Michael Senago, is expected to appear on fraud and corruption charges. Then we move to Durban, the regional court in Durban. The trial of Dr. Genshin Rugnath and his wife, as well as 3 others, is expected to resume. They're facing charges of prostitution and running a brothel with girls as young as 12 years old. In the Cape Town High Court, the sentencing procedures continue for Thandi Makubela, who is found guilty of killing her husband, Acting Judge Patrick Makubela. Time for us to take a break. Newsroom will be back right after this.
Cameroon's economic capital, our unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.
If I'm telling you, you don't like it, I call it defeat.
Join Musam Khalifi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Any surname, please? Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Working in the construction industry is often considered dangerous. Each day, the workers face the risk of injury or at times death. In South Africa, at least 2 deaths occur every week on a construction site. The South African Council for the Project and Construction Management Professions are due to register over 3,000 construction health and safety professionals this year, which will meet the demand for the new National Infrastructure Plan. Now, joining us today is Construction Health and Safety Executive Anthony Forgie. Good morning, Anthony.
Good morning, Eben. Good morning to your viewers, and thank you for the opportunity.
Interesting, we've had a couple of high-profile incidents. The new plan, is it on the back of this?
The new plan isn't on the back of it. The new plan is based on historic evidence and research done, and the new plan essentially began in 2009. These incidents are just some of the many which have happened that are high profile recently, but there have been many incidents. You referred to 2 deaths. It's actually a whole lot more than that. That's from one form of statistics. It goes beyond that. It's over 200 per annum, at least.
That is a scary number. Is it a question of unscrupulous businessmen that run businesses? What's at the heart of this?
Yeah, but it's a combination. There are many factors involving these accidents and injuries. We're only referring to the fatalities now, but there are many people who are disabled, injured, go home with permanent diseases from high occupational exposure. There are many factors, one of which would be the professional or the competency of the professionals working in construction. Another would be the attitude of some employers. Another would be a lack of personal risk appreciation from workers.
Now, workers have to pay to register. How much do they have to pay, and what's the process that they have to follow?
Okay, in short, there are 3 categories which we are registering in the construction health and safety disciplines. The first is the officer. The officer pays just over 197 Rand for their application. If they are successful through their document application, they'll proceed to write an exam, which is just around 400 Rand. And if they are successful with that, then they will go on to pay the costs of registration, which is around 500 and about 1,800 per annum thereafter.
We've just seen pictures of buildings collapse, of course, unsafe working conditions. How is this new move going to alleviate that problem and make working conditions better in practice?
That's a very good question, Eben. And I think we would be under an illusion if we said if we register practitioners, all incidents will cease. That is not the case. But it certainly will contribute to the competence of individuals actually working on construction sites, that those people employed to look after worker safety and those managers on the construction site whose job it is to ensure worker safety will now have to be competent individuals registered with council.
This process, you said, started 2009. It's really been registration's been open in 2013.
Correct.
What's been the reaction from the industry? At times, the industry can be accused of dragging their feet with regards to safety issues. How has the industry at large responded to this?
There are those practitioners who are very happy about this because they are competent practitioners, and there are some that are very unhappy because we are now regulating a previously unregulated industry. So by and large, we're sitting just shy of 2,000 applications since the 1st of June 2013. 50% of that 2,000 has been reached in the last 2 months. So there's a significant acceleration in the applications, pending the promulgation or the implementation of promulgated legislation on the 7th of August. The 7th of August is a big day for construction in South Africa.
Some in the industry say that this could be restrictive. What do you say?
There will always be detractors, I think, even God has detractors, I do believe. The intention, the purpose is not to be restrictive. It's to regulate and to ensure that there are competent individuals practicing on the sites. Those that do not make the grade and who perhaps not meet the registration requirements, some of them may be upset. We have to set the bar somewhere, Eben.
Now, you say August 7 is the date. It looms rather large for everyone in the industry this year. If one does not register by that deadline, is it then illegal for them to work on a construction site in South Africa?
This is true. It will be unlawful for you to practice as a construction practitioner, and we're speaking only in the construction environment. We don't regulate mine health and safety or rail health and safety. This is purely construction. It would be unlawful for you to practice. So there was an 18-month period allowing practitioners time to register and to complete their documentation. What perhaps may be granted by the Department of Labour, our sister organisation, would be a grace period based on the volumes of applications which are received, and perhaps there's a hold-up because of sheer volumes in our department, and they may give a grace period under certain conditions to practitioners who have complied with all of our initial registration requirements.
And who's going to police it, and how are you going to implement?
We are not a policing agency whatsoever. What we will do is we will act on code of conduct deviations where those are reported to us from our registered persons. The Department of Labour are the police, to use your term, will be policing these things. And they will be going to sites. Their strategy, if I had to speak for them, their strategy has moved from using a big stick to beating people, to coming alongside and guiding contractors.
Well, I wish you all the best in this process. I hope it works, because it certainly is needed. Thank you for joining us today. Anthony Forgie, it is.
Thank you.
Who's a construction health and safety executive, and we're talking about legislation within the construction industry. To deal with safety issues, we've been suffering or having some high-profile incidents here in South Africa, but he says more than 200 people die every year almost in the construction industry. So that is very concerning. Thanks for joining us once again.
My privilege, Eben. Thank you.
Now, from the early 20th century, the definition of news, journalism and marketing had been quite clear. But as the media transforms and gains a wider range of readers, listeners and viewers, these concepts or definitions are no longer so clear. The Public Relations Society of America recently listed brand journalism as one of the top 12 trends in public relations for 2012. That was 2 years ago. And now to tell us where we are now and to talk about how journalism can now be used to build brands, we are joined in our Cape Town studio by Helene Lindsay from New Media Publishing, who will give us a little bit more detail. Very good morning to you, Helene. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. It's Helene, just to correct you, sorry, but good morning.
Thank you for correcting me on national TV there, my dear.
Sorry.
Let's move on to this thing. Brand journalism, isn't it two concepts that are contradictory in a way?
To a certain extent, yes, but the notion of storytelling, which is a bandied about term at the moment, but the notion of storytelling is how people have always connected. So journalism is about sharing news or about sharing information or about educating people. And brands have used it now, and if it's done with integrity, they use it to connect with their audiences as well, as long as it has something to do with the nature of the topic. So if you think of brands like Red Bull, the most famous one, Red Bull uses the concept of adventure and communities to be able to connect with their audiences. And they've done it really well. You know, it's all linked to an energy drink, but it has an authority. They have an authority to speak about it. There's an interesting local example, PPC Cement, the least likely candidate, and they've just launched a fantastic design competition, how to use cement in applications other than buildings. So the two notions are, or used to not be linked, but I think they're very closely aligned.
It sounds a lot to me like agencies, again, trying to trick us consumers out there with a new concept. How do you view that?
I agree with you. I think there were a lot of people who rather not misunderstand, but abuse the concept of content marketing or branded journalism, because it's not about the word and the text, and it's not about bombarding people with more content. There is so much already on the web. We get bombarded with adverts on the side of buses. You can't even go to the Lunan airport and not have to face an ad. So I completely agree with you, but I think that there are agencies, or I know there are agencies, that are doing it with incredible amount of integrity. And when it's done that way, it actually adds value to a consumer's life. So if you think of a retailer that deals with parenting issues and actually gives their consumers very real tips on how to deal with school issues and dietary requirements, exercise requirements, that is adding value to someone's life. If you think about IKEA, for example, which is a fantastic, everybody knows the Scandinavian retailer, but they publish 42 catalogs. They've got 8 YouTube channels. They're using content, but to make their consumers' lives better. So the YouTube channels deal with how to put the flat packs together, with design tips, with color advice. So it actually adds value when you do it properly. I think there are a lot of people that don't understand how to do it properly.
Marketing 101, you're telling me. What is the impact of brand journalism then on journalism that I see myself as doing a little bit?
So in the beginning, a few years prior, when content marketing wasn't such a popular term, it was regarded as the poorer cousin of publishing. And I would hate journalists to feel that it's a marketer trying to use an expertise, a craft and a skill, which I believe journalism is. So I would believe the impact now is that there are companies who understand the absolute quality and the nature of craftsmanship that is required. And when they do it well, and they do it according to the traditions of pure journalism. And I've also seen there's been a knock-on effect of the economy, of newsrooms cutting down, of the myriad channels and options available. The budgets aren't as big anymore, and I would hope that as journalism gets compromised in the normal sense, where it's relying on consumers or advertisers to support them, that branded journalism helps journalists raise the bar once again for a skill and a profession that's very much respected.
So what are the marketers saying then? Is that journalism in general, the craft, as we'd like to call it, is that in decline and that we're going into a more commercial stroke PR scenario?
No, I don't think so, because what I'm hearing, the train of these questions, I think I'd like to just make something very clear, is that it's not about creating more content. As I said earlier, there are some content agencies at the moment who are churning over, repackaging, repurpose and selling content because it's linked to something. I think that is absolute nonsense, and I think that the brands and the marketers that are employing that are doing everybody a disservice. But when it's done properly, we employ, and I know all the other people that we regard as competitors and peers in our field, employ the most brilliant journalists, the most brilliant editors, the most brilliant designers, because we believe in the quality, because we believe in excellence. So we actually are buying into exactly, I think, what you are fighting for. We are not marketers. We are publishers first and foremost. We happen just to fulfill a marketing role for a brand, and I think that's the difference.
And what do you think, then, would be the benefit for the consumer? Because in the end, that should be the gauge, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. If it's not adding benefit, then it's a waste of money, and it's actually an insult. The benefit to the consumer, and I've seen it on myriad occasions, for some of our clients we provide health advice, and we actually tackle their real problems. So it's not, very often consumer publications publish I'm not to be rude, but they publish, 10 ways to lose weight and 3 ways to get your beach body ready. And what we are trying to do is speak with authority. So if we're talking for a financial services company, we don't talk about fashion. We will talk about how to save money, how to put money away for the trust fund. What is the difference between a retirement annuity and a pension fund? So we actually use the expertise of the business that we're representing to help the consumer get insights. And I think that's important. It's not done frivolously. It's done with meaning and care and respect.
Thank you very much, Helene, for joining us today from Cape Town. That's Helene Lindsay.
Thank you, Urban.
She's from New Media Publishing, and we're talking about brand journalism, how it impacts on the wider sphere of journalism. In the end, it's just more marketing for you and me, the lay people out there. Let's take a look now at our picture of the day. This one comes from Khomotso Neto, and there you'll see some of the scenes from yesterday in Jeppes, where, well, violent protests broke out once again, and 22 people were arrested. It is not our right to protest violently. It is our right to protest. Let's have a look at your tweets. Please, at SABC Newsroom is where we love to have your views. And we're talking about Mina Demian says, Maboneng security guards say protesters never got to Arts on Main, downplayed as silly people, Jeppe protest. Hadassah says, police opening fire on angry protesters wanting answers to eviction concerns. This is not the way to do things. Jeppes protect. Karen Morrow says, just musing about what outrage the Jeppes protest would have elicited if it had occurred in Cape Town. Those bad evictions, says Karen. Yes, sarcasm is always the lowest form of wit, isn't it? There you have some wonderful pictures incoming of what happened in Jeppes Town yesterday, and that one from C. We talk about against Maboneng protests are now skirmishes and looting. Well, let's go to our Facebook page. Newsroom Facebook page on Facebook. You can like our page. We like it when you like our page. Now, there we talk about the memorial service that will be held in Pretoria today for the Public Service Minister, Colin Shabani. Government says the event will be open to all members of the public. It starts at 12 o'clock. You can also read more on the attacks on Tunisia's National Museum. 5 Japanese as well as visitors from Italy, Poland and Spain were among those who died. Government says they can't confirm whether it was a South African. Then more on this. Several people who were killed in a restaurant shooting in the Swedish city of Gothenburg yesterday in what police say was likely to be a gang-related incident, not terror-related. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more, of course, on that Facebook page. You see right on air there. It's Newsroom's Facebook page in the search bar. sabc.co.za/news. That's where you get breaking news updates all the time. Time for us to take a break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Of South Sudan and Sudan have confirmed their commitment to the cooperation agreement signed in September 2012.
As a panel, we are very pleased indeed with the position taken by both governments to implement whatever is outstanding.
About 100 bodies have been retrieved from a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. The boat carrying up to 200 migrants sank 1 kilometer from the Libyan coast.
In recent months, many boats have been wrecked as thousands of migrants, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa, have crowded into poorly made vessels in an effort to reach Italian shores.
That's PM News every day, 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver a keynote address at the memorial service of Public Service Minister Colin Shabani. The official memorial service of the late minister will be held at the Tshwane Event Centre in Pretoria at noon today. Shabani and 2 of his bodyguards were killed in a car crash on the N1 near Polokwane on Sunday morning. He will be buried on Saturday at his home village of Shikundu in Limpopo. President Jacob Zuma will deliver an eulogy at Chabane's funeral. The situation in Jeppe's Town in Johannesburg seems to be calm this morning after violent protests broke out in the area yesterday. 22 people were arrested after residents took to the streets in protest of an eviction notice by a private developer. Police say they will continue to monitor the situation in the area today. Government says it cannot confirm whether a South African is among those killed in the Tunisian Bardo Museum attack. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has condemned the attack, saying that no terrorist action can reverse the path of Tunisia towards democracy. Gunmen killed at least 20 people outside of the prestigious museum yesterday. Those killed included victims from Japan and Italy as they prepared to visit the Bardo Museum next to Parliament in Tunisia. Tourists from Colombia, Australia, Spain and Poland were also killed. Remember, you can find all of those stories on Facebook. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Anine. Now, science enthusiasts will have an opportunity to interact with top-level NASA delegates at this year's South African National Science Festival, or SciFest as it's known. The annual event, now in its 19th year, kicked off yesterday in Grahamstown and ends on the 24th of March. That's next week. More than 600 events are scheduled for the festival, and this year the public will be able to interact with a NASA delegation, including the American Space Agency's chief scientists. Now, our very own reporter, Lerato Tipa, is at the festival. She will interview the media officer of the festivals first. But good morning, Lerato.
Good morning, and how are you?
Very good. Before you go into the interview, just give us a quick idea as to how things have started there.
Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the South African National Science Festival. It started yesterday and runs up until the 24th of March. Now, the theme for this year's Science Festival is Science Alight. Now, what you see behind me are numerous young people from all across the country making their way inside the monument. Inside the monument are exhibitors who are doing everything from atmospheric science, environmental science, gravity, agriculture, and also arts and culture, just to name a few. Now, last year they managed to get 68,000 visitors to Grahamstown alone, with over 80 exhibitors showcasing everything from maths and science. And this year is going to be even bigger and better. With me this morning is Stephen Lang, the media officer, who's going to tell us what Science 15 Festival is going to offer. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thanks. And how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Can you tell us what are going to be some of the highlights of Science Fest 2015?
Well, one of the biggest highlights is the NASA delegation. There are 4 of the top scientists that have come here, and this is a unique event. These are the top guys, including the chief scientist of NASA. These are people who are responsible for planning exploration, manned exploration into space, for driving the Mars Curiosity rover, for sending space probes to Pluto and to the dwarf planet Ceres. So these are really top-class people. What we did last night is we had a panel discussion between 2 people in Washington, D.C., 2 people here, and they discussed where NASA is going to in terms of space exploration. They were also talking a lot about how they individually got inspired to take on the sciences, how they took up astrophysicists and things like that. For example, the chief scientist of NASA is a woman, by the way, and she started out life interested in geology. She said when she was a little girl, she used to go out and see the mountains and the valleys and wonder how they were formed. And then she got interested in volcanoes. And then she did a huge study on comparing volcanoes on Earth, Venus, and Mars. And now she's chief scientist of NASA. There's also the Bloodhound supersonic car, which is going to make an attempt at the land speed record. Later this year or early next year, they intend to go over 1,000 miles an hour. This is an amazing achievement, and they've decided to have it here in South Africa because they have land that is flat and acceptable, and the conditions are good for it. There's also a very important South African contingent here. You know that South Africa is very involved in astronomy and space. For example, we have SANSA, the South African National Space Agency, that sends up satellites, CubeSats. They're only very small, but they're very powerful. And as you know, that today, things that are smaller and more powerful all the time. There's also an exhibition here for the Square Kilometre Array, which, as you know, is going to be the biggest single radio astronomy project on planet Earth. We're going to have scientists from all over the world. They come here and they study and they get data from all over the deepest reaches of the universe. Now, one of the most important goals of SciFest Africa is to get young people enthusiastic about the sciences. They need to be enthusiastic because they need to take up studies further on. They need to get to university. We need to get more people with PhDs. And the Department of Science and Technology is acutely aware of this need to get more people studying the sciences. So they're trying to make it fun. They're trying to create awareness and make it attractive for young people. They need to spur the curiosity of young people and see what else they can find out, make them interested in studying.
Thank you so much. That was Stephen Lang, the media officer of Science Fest 2015, saying that the #1 objective of this festival, now in its 19th year anniversary, is to make science and maths interesting and fun for young people so that the future generation become the leaders and thought leaders in this field. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much to Lerato there for an update. She is at the Science Fest, or the Sci-Fest as it's now known, in Grahamstown. That'll run until the 24th of March next week. Should be interesting. Even NASA is there. They've got their chief scientist in Grahamstown. Should be very interesting what comes out of that. We'll try and keep you updated. Now, South Africa, we move on again, as we always do. South Africa has the largest HIV and AIDS treatment program in the world, but this would not have been possible without dedicated activism and a commitment to social justice. Speaking Truth to Power. It's a book that looks at how the AIDS Law Project and ordinary people have stood up against prejudice and disinformation because they felt strongly about their rights. Now, for our weekly book slot, we are now joined in studio by the author of Speaking Truth to Power, Didi Moal. Very good morning to you, Didi. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Evan. Nice to be here.
This is a very important book because at times I think all of us in South Africa are a little bit in denial about HIV and AIDS. Would that be accurate?
I think AIDS has been such a huge problem in this country that there are moments where people just don't want to see it. They just don't want to know about it. And also I think people are exhausted by the subject. You know, when you think of what a grueling battle it was from the 90s to today, where we do have the largest treatment program in the world, it was a long battle between activists and governments, the medical profession and government. And today we have reached a point where we do have a big treatment program. The people are living longer. The transmission from mothers to babies has reduced substantially. But the problem isn't over. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we still need to do. We need to stop people becoming HIV positive in the first place.
Where is the problem with new infections? Is it that 15 to 24 age group that's often pointed out as the problem area, and communicating with them at times can be difficult? I find it an improbable argument.
It's actually over a number of age groups. In the last survey that was released, there was an increase of infections amongst middle-aged people, which is quite a disturbing thing to be happening in South Africa. But my book is not about prevention. Yes. My book is about how a very small NGO that was based at Wits University in the beginning and was started by Judge Edwin Cameron was trying to stop the discrimination against people living with HIV. Because basically what was happening was that people were losing their jobs. People were being tested illegally by their employers. Yeah. And part of their battle was to actually say people who have HIV are productive members of society. They can carry on, they can work. The process from HIV to AIDS can be 10, 12 years. So you can't discriminate against people. Yes. And also, with people who are sick, they need to be helped.
It was a fight that was more than a decade in the making. What were some of the low points and the high points throughout this process?
You know, I think the sort of the beginning of the problem really was when President Thabo Mbeki stood up and questioned. He questioned the AZT in particular, which was the only drug available at the time. And that, I think, created a lot of confusion amongst ordinary South Africans about, should we take these drugs? Shouldn't we take these drugs? Is there this thing called AIDS? Is it just a conspiracy? And I think that confusion, you know, some people who were actually on the medication went off the medication, which jeopardized their health incredibly. But I think that was a very difficult thing. And I think it was very difficult that the ANC didn't question what he was doing until 2002. It took a long time for the ANC to actually say, maybe we need to look at this differently. And I think what was really incredible was a group of people stood up and said, you know, we've got to help people. We've got to make sure that people can get access to treatment that will allow them to live.
Do you feel that that process was unnecessary and cost many lives?
Well, Harvard did a study of it, and they looked at, I think it was a period between 2000 and 2005, and they reckon the delay in bringing in a treatment program cost more than 300,000 South Africans their lives.
Now, the ARP story, it's also the story of clients and their cases. What have been some of the, if you look back and what you've got in the book, some of the milestone cases that you highlight or that you want to talk about?
Oh, yes. The book is actually told through the cases, through the clients of the ALP. The ALP didn't want to tell their own story. They wanted to be told through their clients. The major cases were around discrimination. There was particularly a big case against SAA, which wouldn't employ any cabin crew that were HIV positive. And then after that, once the discrimination had been dealt with and the Labour Relations Act changed and there was legal protection for people living with HIV, then it became the battle for treatment, which was making sure that women got antiretroviral treatment before giving birth if they were HIV positive. Then was making sure that drugs were getting into prisons, making sure that there was no discrimination in the military. So there was a whole area of court cases in succession, which was about making sure that the rights of people who are living with HIV and AIDS were protected.
Where can we find your book, Didi?
Next week, the book is going to be released into most large bookshops.
Good bookshops, as they say. And quickly, you've got 30 seconds to tell us, yes, about the book. This is the book is available from next week in all good bookstores, Didi tells me. But where are we in terms of human rights for people living with HIV and AIDS today?
We are in a much better position than we were when the first AIDS cases came into South Africa, which was the late 80s, early 90s. We have a jurisprudence that protects people living with AIDS. What we need to do is to make sure that young people don't get AIDS. We've got to do a lot more about the prevention of the transmission. And we've also got to do a lot more about making sure that people can access treatment more easily.
Well, I thank you, and I thank you for writing this book. It's a reflection on what some people would say was a difficult and dark time in the fight against the horrific disease that's laid so many South Africans low. Thank you for joining us today. That's Didi Moyle, who's the author of Speaking Truth to Power. It's a book that you'll be able to find in all bookstores from next week onwards. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
again. Now, final comments. In the comments about Sweden. Now, this was a gang-related incident, says the authorities in that country. not a terror incident. Update, 2 people have died in the shooting in Göteborg, as they call it in Sweden. The death toll is expected to rise there. There you have a young lady with blood on her hands. There's the Swedish flag. What is this world coming to? Several people shot inside a cafe in Gothenburg. Yes, it not only does it happen in South Africa, everybody, it happens in what we would call the most civilized of countries in the world, Sweden as well. Gothenburg shooting. Several died in the bar from automatic gunshots fired. 8 taken to hospital. They expect it to be a gang-related incident. You wouldn't say there are gangs in Sweden. No, I was unaware of that. Well, anyhow, it's not only in South Africa where we have these incidents as we try. We were going to give you a quick cricket update. I can't tell you, we can't. India have scored more than 300 runs in that game. It should be a tough chase for Bangladesh. That's where we leave it. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon on the same channel with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. the following day. You can also watch us live on YouTube in the office if you want to, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel all of the time. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.